Welcome to the Reptile Gumbo Pop. Ooh.
Whoa, you fucked that up.
What was that?
That was
Mary Poppins?
I don't know what that was. But welcome to the Reptile Gumbo Podcast, episode 81.
It's because you slept too long.
In our brand new mattress.
A 2-hour nap is much better than a 4-hour nap. I'm just saying.
Nap. Y'all are cute with y'all's naps.
I
I got home from the shop at 6:30.
Oh,
Yeah.
Did you eat? Do I need to go fix you food?
We had really good dinner.
Good.
Oh, so anyways, I've been looking forward to this episode. But let's get your intro stuff out of the way. Yeah, she doesn't have pulled.
I'm not ready. I forgot. I wasn't here last week. It threw me off.
You haven't been here a lot of weeks.
Softball.
Yeah, so now we're on Tuesday for anybody that
We are on Tuesdays. You can blame softball for that one.
thanks to Texas softball at 7:30 at night.
When it's only 97 degrees.
Instead of 170.
Yeah, but in late October, you might get a cold front where it's on the third. Lavissa was messaging me about something today, and she's like, "Yeah, it's getting down in the 50s here already at night." And I'm a little worried. I'm like, I'm gonna delete you. I don't need you anymore.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I thought it was good the other day when it was like at nighttime and it was 80.
My sister-in-law is in West Virginia and it was 74. That was the high the other day with a 74-degree heat index and a breeze. And I'm like, it's not that I hate you. I just hate your current weather.
All right. Do you want to do?
I do. If you're looking for a high quality PVC rack, look no further than Lone Star Reptile Racks. They offer a variety of sizes for all types of snakes, geckos, rats, and more. You can even order something custom. Shipping is available, or you can pick up at a Herps Reptile show near you. Visit lsreptileracks.com to reach out to Lone Star Reptile Racks and place your order today.
.com.
Why? I'm going to stab you in the throat. See, look.
It makes me choke.
You're going to kill Robert. This is unacceptable.
It gives them the vid.
Unacceptable.
I'm pretty sure I gave you the vid.
That is true, but I'm good. See, look,
even Victor.com. Lord,
he's a listener.
Mercy.
You can't yell at listeners.
Sure I can. Victor, don't encourage him. Dude, I have to tell you the funniest thing I saw on the internet this week was you telling your dad you don't always have to be right.
Dude, they get into fights more often.
The best part is, so we get into a fight and then I leave it, and then like super liberal friends will start getting into a fight with my dad. I'm like, all right,
an hour later, his dad calls and we're in the car and it's just like nothing has happened.
Because it's nothing personal.
No.
They're so funny.
Just,
whereas I will hold a grudge for a week.
But
Don't
it's
piss
totally
me off.
personal for the people that get in on the argument.
Well, like Chris Eaton's post. The one you shared. The one that you and your dad were arguing on.
So,
people keep commenting, and Chris is like, "Shut the fuck up."
So, anyways, the whole post was some meme about
I didn't even read
ignoring science, people ignoring science and everything, and
calling their research,
doing their own research.
Yeah.
And Chris Eaton posted it just because he's a dick. You know, it's funny. And then people were like taking it serious and like leaving big long comments and everything.
Like your vaccination.
So I had
vacation.
Yeah, I didn't read that one right either.
So I had a whole response like typed up to the one guy. And I was like, in other news, Florida, man, because the one guy who kept commenting with the little green thing was Florida. Not only doubled down and not only proved to us that he's an asshole, but he's also a fucking idiot. And I was like, that'll probably get me kicked off Facebook.
So for some reason, right before I went to bed last night, I decided on like 3 different posts just to be a dumbass. There was one, the Black Panther one.
Sometimes I go to bed and going to be surprised on my phone in the morning when I wake up.
Did you see one on the Black Panther one? So someone posted some dead bobcats, and I was like, "Y'all are idiots! Don't come online talking about stuff you don't know. Those are dead Black Panthers. Everyone knows the melanin goes away when they die."
It's like a rough green snake that turns blue.
I just started ranting about stupid shit. I forget there's another one in there somewhere. I was just like, "Let's just say stupid shit and see if anybody realizes it's a joke."
Yeah,
not
my group.
Also, we mentioned Herb's Reptile shows. This weekend is the big Conroe show.
Mm-hmm.
Excited about that one. That's gonna be a good one. You've got a lot of work. Get ready for that one. Are you almost ready for it?
We're getting there.
Sweet.
Oh, we'll be packed up midday Thursday. We'll be there early Friday to unload.
Sweet.
You'll be driving over right after school.
I have Lucas is going with us this weekend.
Oh, great. Someone to load stuff outside.
That's right. I figured James would appreciate that.
Fuck yeah. I don't have to go outside. I will say, if you're looking on the Herps website, the New Orleans show for September 25th and 26th, obviously been canceled.
Yeah, I've had like 4 people this week try and make pre-orders for that show, and I'm like,
damn. I mean, it's
at this point, people in New Orleans are hoping they have electricity by then.
Yeah,
so
it's rough over there.
Yeah.
I think I talked about it last week. I was heartbroken. I keep seeing pictures of Grand Isle. and a Point of Sham down there by Homa, and it's all gone. That's horrible. But October 2nd and 3rd, Beaumont, Texas. Come out and see that show. That's an awesome venue still. I still like that place, the Ford Arena or whatever it is.
They're having a lot of issues with that place, though.
Oh, really?
I follow KFDM News. It's Beaumont. My dad lives out there, and part of my life I've been out there a lot. And I follow their local news station. So about a year ago, the county made a deal. It's been a drain on the county budget for years. It's been a money losing thing for them.
Really?
For the upkeep and all that with the Ford Park and the baseball. They already sold off the baseball fields to some big tournament group. And they made a deal with this company to take it over, and they haven't written them a check yet. And the county commissioners are starting to talk about canceling that contract, which could cause problems with that venue. County's like, we can't afford to run it anymore. So if they don't buy it, we're going to shut it down.
Because it's not just, it's the convention center where we're at. It's the giant arena next to it. And then you also have the big outdoor concert
that
area.
place has like big name acts come there and play. And it's a B-level market.
So the problem is it's in Beaumont.
Right. But it's close enough to Houston and close enough to Lake Charles that it draws a pretty good crowd. I actually like the venue. I've been to a couple of concerts there. It's a good venue.
So come out and see us October 2nd and 3rd in Beaumont. Temple, Texas, October 23rd and 24th. And then I'm sure as hell not driving out to Amarillo, Texas, October 30th, 31st. But Robert is.
Oh, yeah, I'll be there.
He'll be in Amarillo. It's about 700 miles away from here.
Yeah, it's not bad. It is about 700 miles.
It's about 700 miles away from here. It's a complete day's drive. All right. Also, if you are anywhere around Southeast Alabama, or if you just want to take a trip by that way, go by and see Wiregrass Exotics in Ozark, Alabama. Take advantage of their awesome feeder program. They had some great animals I saw for sale the other day. They posted online. So you should also follow Wiregrass Exotics on Facebook. But go by and see the Ruas. That place, I wish that we didn't live so far away from Alabama. I really want to go there. But we will make it there.
It doesn't hurt that we have really good friends that are like
30 minutes away. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think. Oh, Herp's Exotic Reptile and Pet Shop. The Herp Shop is opening on September
29th.
They moved it. No, they moved it up, didn't they?
Yeah, the 28th or 29th. They moved it up from October.
No, it's the 13th.
13th.
It's Lori's week. It's Lori's birthday weekend, 13th and 14th of November.
No. She just made a post a little while ago that they're opening, their soft opening. It was supposed to be.
We should probably pay attention to these things.
Their soft opening was supposed to be. She put it right here. Herp Show vendors.
Enjoy our.
I don't know. She put it somewhere.
Anyway,
they're opening because Rachel's birthday is the 26th, so they're opening like the 28th now.
Gotcha.
And then their grand opening is going to be Lori's birthday.
Gotcha.
Oh, the soft opening is at the end of September. The grand or the end of October.
Yep.
October, September.
One of those months.
When is Rachel's birthday?
September.
So the soft opening is in September, but the grand opening is November.
This is riveting. I'm so glad everybody's listening.
Jeez,
I hope y'all are enjoying this conversation.
I mean, there's 15 people that are hanging out for it.
We'll have more updates on that as it gets closer.
They're not here for us. They're here for our guests. Let's be real.
Yeah. It's fun to
they're awesome.
Make the smart guys wait.
One of them deserted us.
I can see one ran away. He said, forget this shit.
Screw you guys. I'm going home.
I'll go ahead and bring our guest in. So our guests are, I'm going to do it alphabetically, Dr. Warren Booth. How's it going, Warren?
Very well. How are you?
And Dr. Travis Wyman. How's it going, Travis? I ain't calling you doctor. Forget you. Travis. So Travis sent a thing to me earlier. A year ago, we had him on. A year ago today.
Really?
Yeah. So apparently I have him on way too much is what I'm finding out.
Oh. Is it really too much?
I was just going to say, I don't feel like it's too much because I feel like it's been forever since I've seen you.
Well, if you would be on the podcast more,
I'm sorry. Somebody has to be a parent to our child.
Forget that kid. She's old enough now. She can take care of herself. Just don't let her live in the woods with wolves.
Oh, my God.
So I'm not going to do the whole, if you learn about Warren, there's 5 million podcasts Warren's been on. You can go learn about Warren. I think the most recent was probably Chris's podcast, which was really, both of y'all have recently been on Chris's podcast on Snakes and the Fat Man.
But does anybody have a picture that looks even half as good as Travis's picture with that green snake? I'm just saying.
Did you say that green snake?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. but it looks really cool. And it's a super amazing photograph.
My wife gets all the credit for that.
Yes. It was glorious.
He tried his hardest not to look like a nerd.
Well, see, that was for Chris. When Chris said, I need a high resolution professional headshot, and my wife overheard him say that, she's like, oh, we can take care of that. We'll just go down to the studio. And like Chris started bugging me for days. And I was like, you don't understand. As soon as my wife heard that, we need to get into the studio. She needs to edit and everything. And when I sent it to Chris, he's like, you just knocked this out of the park.
Yes, it was amazing.
Yeah, it made it easy for me. I just went and found it on Facebook for mine. So I'm glad Chris made you take pictures. Lavissa Ratliff is still talking about your cheesecake.
Raspberry cheesecake. We talked about that before we
got on here. But that's like the first thing that she said.
It was
raspberry.
I couldn't remember who it was.
Raspberry cheesecake. So, for those that don't know, that Travis likes to make food for his coworkers, and that was for your daughter. But you can follow him on Snakes and Bakes, or you can follow that other one, the Canadian one, which I'm sure is better. Snakes and Snacks, or whatever it is.
Shut up, James.
Oh, I was thinking that was funny. Victor wants to know, how was the cabin, Warren?
It was glorious. Yeah, really nice. Spent kind of long weekend in the cabin in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, with some friends. So it was really,
that sounds
really nice.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I still find it so funny you ended up in Oklahoma.
I hear Broken Bow is a beautiful part of Oklahoma.
Yeah, it really is. It's beautiful. Kind of in the foothills of the Ouachitas, and really nice lakes and rivers. Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah.
James was surprised when we went to Oklahoma a few weeks ago, and he's like, "There's a mountain here." I said, "Yeah, you drive right through a mountain."
We drove past the mountain in Oklahoma.
Well, no, when you go west in Oklahoma, it's like not what you expect.
It's nothing. It's flat and Native Americans and Warren.
There's nothing pretty in Shawnee.
No.
There's no money in Shawnee either. Apparently,
you don't enjoy the casino.
The flies.
The fly. My God, Warren. I don't know. Did y'all have a fly? No, you weren't at the rodeo, so I'm sure y'all don't have a fly problem where you were. We went up there for Shawnee for the Herp show, and they had a rodeo like the week before, and they just shoveled the shit and put it off to the side, and it had to be literally a million flies.
Yeah, I see a lot more this year than I normally do see.
They're big, like
a lot more. Kind of weird. I don't know what it was, but we, for the last kind of month, maybe 2 months, there was a whole pile of fruit flies at one point, and then a whole pile of like just house flies. I've got no idea, but everybody was complaining about the same thing. So
there's totally a joke there about being a giant pile of shit. I'm leaving it alone.
John Grant is also in Oklahoma too. So
John Grant is in Oklahoma, and I make fun of him all the time for it too. I moved to Texas. It's my job now to make fun of Oklahoma.
That's what we do.
Totally missed that when we moved.
I'm trying to fit in. I refuse to do the Texas
trying
pledge.
to learn the Texas pledge.
I'm not learning the Texas pledge. For anybody out there that doesn't realize this, Texas has a pledge
that they say after the Pledge of Allegiance,
and it is not good
because we had our own country for 6 years.
But it's not even a good pledge.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's like random words. It doesn't even.
A pledge.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's really funny on the morning announcements this morning because we have students that help with those. The little bitty first grader went to say the Pledge of Allegiance and totally said the Texas pledge instead of the Pledge of Allegiance. I was like, oh goodness.
I'm not pledging to Texas. I don't care how long I live here. Anyways, so I wanted to have y'all on for a genetics not lesson. No, not having a genetics.
It'll be a lesson for Katie.
It will be for Katie. Katie's learn all about genetics. But I've been wanting to have y'all on because I find it hilarious on a certain Facebook page that we all seem to frequent about how people will just tell Warren and Travis they don't know what they're talking about
when it comes to genetics.
And I love it. Yeah. I love every time it happens. But last time I was good. I didn't even tag you, Warren, last time. I just put your website there.
John Grant did.
So I would like to I would just like to state for the record, when he says how much he loves this, I don't think you either fully understand, because it ends up with him bursting into laughter in whatever room of the house he's in, and then quickly coming to find me in the house and be like, look at what this idiot just said. And I'm I have no clue what's going on.
It would be one thing if it was just one time someone told Warren he knows nothing about parthenogenesis and snakes. But every time someone mentions parthenogenesis, his name gets brought up, and then someone is adamant about how it doesn't exist.
I think my favorite one was this last guy that was
the guy who
I read his.
He kept going forever.
Yeah, he was like, I read his research, and I don't agree.
Yeah, I love that. He goes, I read his research. How about you? I was like, I've talked to the man, and then he never said another thing again to me. But,
yeah, you get that a lot. I don't really spend any time on Facebook on groups or anything, So it's I used to, and then I realized it just caused my blood pressure to increase, and I don't need that to happen. So
You don't need that negativity in your life.
Yeah,
just throw that out the window.
So
I don't really care, So if people want to believe it, that's cool. If they don't want to believe it, that's cool. I don't really care.
I just get on there now for the pure entertainment of that.
I'm there for fun.
Yeah.
I love to laugh at stupid people. I mean, that's why I'm a high school teacher. I can laugh at kids all day long.
Oh my gosh.
What? They're stupid. You know how many kids try to argue that mermaids are real?
I teach babies.
And then their argument for mermaids being
reason.
real is that because just because we haven't seen them doesn't mean they're not real.
My biggest issue today was that it hurt when a kid did this to their wrist. And so my response was, well, then baby, if that hurts, just don't do it. And then our whole day was better, and it was glorious.
that was your biggest issue all
That
day?
was my biggest issue all day today.
Fuck you.
My wrist hurts when I do this. I'm like, well, baby, let's not do that then. Come on, what should we do?
My biggest issue is I have kids that don't speak English.
Yeah.
That could be rough.
That could be right.
I luckily have kids that speak English and Spanish, and I just now have built-in translators in every class.
You hope they're translating your lesson.
That's true. They could totally just be making up
what
shit.
they did this weekend.
Well, when I hear them laughing, I'm like, they're not talking about what we're doing, but I can't tell them to quit talking because at some point she is going to tell her what we're doing.
So tell them to focus.
Yeah.
Learn the word focus in Spanish, and you're good to go.
I've been trying to convince myself to learn Spanish for about 9 years. I teach a course in the rainforest in Costa Rica, in a rainforest in Costa Rica every year. And every year I come back and say, you know what, I need to learn Spanish. And every year I don't learn Spanish. So
the other 4 third grade teachers are bilingual at my school. And then there's me.
The other 4 teachers are Hispanic at your school.
And I stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, they all have like really nice Hispanic names. And then your last name is
and then
Lewis.
it's like Lewis. I'm like, geez.
When you teach it, can I say? No, I shouldn't say what.
Well, no, but I do teach at a very Hispanic.
Well,
the name of the school is
name.
Well, yes. And she's a wonderful person, by the way. I
Oh,
met
yeah?
her the
You met
other
her?
day. She comes to the school all the time, which is strange for me because I'm like, if you name a school after someone, shouldn't they be deceased?
Dead, yeah.
Like,
wait, did you tell that one? Hey, man, we're supposed to be
No.
dead. We named the school after you.
Well, they build so many schools in the school district every year. They have to find people to name them after.
There are so many schools that are just named after people. I'm like, I can't keep up with that.
okay, we got really far off topic.
Yeah.
Let's get back to genetics.
So,
Sorry, guys.
all right. So I actually had some had a Partho question. I was thinking, so for anybody that doesn't know, Warren has done a lot of work in parthenogenesis.
Okay,
Um,
pause. Can you, in layman's terms, explain parthenogenesis? Also,
Good.
did I say it correctly?
Me or anyone
Okay.
else? Me? Okay.
Yeah, I don't care.
It's simply when a female will produce offspring without the use of sperm from a male, so that the offspring will have no genetic contribution from a father. But they're not clones of the mother. In the case of snakes, apart from one species, they're not clones of the mother. They're what we refer to as a half clone. So they've got one set of chromosomes, and that's essentially doubled. They're not exactly doubled, but they're essentially.
Okay,
So they're basically homozygous across most of their genomes. So therefore, they're not very healthy.
So what is the difference between that and an animal that is asexual and reproduces on its own?
Because asexual organisms tends to be the main mechanism that they use. So these asexual organisms are often formed from the hybridization of 2 different species. And therefore, instead of being diploid, so having a set of chromosomes from the mother and the father, they actually have 3 sets of chromosomes, generally 2 from the mother and 1 from the father. So that means they simply, chromosomes can no longer pair, and they can't produce sexually, so asexually. They also tend to be very short-lived species in evolutionary time, kind of 20, 30, 50, 40,000 years. They're not long-lived old species. Whereas those that are, the term that we use is facultative parthenogenesis, so they are primarily producing sexually, and sometimes they will produce asexually. And that can be an entire clutch or an entire litter of offspring. It can be entire clutches or litters over the course of several years, or it can be just 1 or 2 offspring within a clutch or a litter.
So they won't actually just like retain the sperm and then like 4 years down the road
They can do that as well. Snakes can do that. We have,
but that's not parthenogenesis.
no, that's long-term sperm storage, and we have 2 papers out that are the longest documented instances of sperm storage in snakes that is genetically confirmed, and the longest is just over 6 years. Both cases are in rattlesnakes, one eastern diamondback and one western diamondback rattlesnake, and they produced, I think the last paper came out, it was 8 offspring, and the one in eastern diamondbacks was, I think, 19.
I still don't understand how this works. It's fascinating.
So that's a really cool. The sperm storage is actually, it interests me a lot more than parthenogenesis, because if you think about what's happening with a snake in its annual cycle, especially rattlesnakes, they're going from a very cold temperature whenever they're hibernating to very warm temperatures in the summer when they're basking, and they're going through this cycle year after year. Sperm should not store, viable sperm should not store throughout that period of time. If you think about what happens with humans or with cattle, they have to store sperm in sub-zero temperatures, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it lasts not a long. I've got a friend that breeds Irish wolfhounds, and they buy sperm for their Irish wolfhounds from Europe, and I think they said it normally lasts about 3 to 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So if we understood the mechanism by which snakes can do this, then that would be a great way to actually revolutionize the whole sperm storage market, which is huge in the world. We have an idea of what they're doing, and we're about to start a study to look into it more, but ball pythons can do it over a couple of years. Colubrids can do it generally over a season, sometimes more. Some snakes, like copperheads, depending on where they are in their range, will mate before hibernation and then ovulate after hibernation. And blood pythons, we know up to about 3 years. Boas aren't very good at it, but the real kings of it or queens of it are the pit vipers, or the rattlesnakes, realistically.
So
Cool.
I had a question and it just ran away. Oh, so when an animal like a corn snake double clutches, is that basically just short-term sperm? Yeah, okay.
Well, it could be long. We could still call it long-term. It really, if you're a mammal, sperm stores for a couple of hours, maybe a couple of days. The records are probably bats, which can store sperm maybe over a year.
Oh, wow.
But bats are cool in general for many things. Very long-lived species and just incredible. But corn snakes, I suppose you could call it a long-term sperm storage. But what you tend to find with double clutching, at least in my experience, I used to breed hundreds of corn snakes over the years. And the second clutch, if the female wasn't introduced to a male again, the second clutch tended to have a higher level of infertility. But they could still store sperm. We have a new paper we're working on in old world pit vipers, which is sperm storage over about the space of about a year or a year and a half. But the cool thing about it is that they produced offspring and then went through an entire cycle and then produced offspring again, and they were all healthy. So the pit vipers tend to be this group that can store sperm really well, despite undergoing these sometimes really incredible fluctuations in temperature over the year.
So I was kind of said earlier, but so does parthenogenesis technically count as asexual reproduction? Because when I think asexual, I think like yeast and budding or prokaryotic cells splitting in half.
It's just a form of that. Asexual reproduction is really quite diverse, and there's multiple forms of parthenogenesis. Snakes, there's one species, the Brahminy blind snake. They are triploid and they're clonal. They use a different mechanism than every other snake species that we know of. And we have snakes. We have lots of species of boas and pythons where we have records for it, or I have samples in the freezer. We got lots of pit vipers. We have cobras recently. We had a paper on king cobras. I got samples from Dumerils, boas, and so on. But and we've got a bunch of samples that I've never processed for colubrids, for corn snakes, king snakes, rat snakes, and they'll probably go onto the sequencer next. But they are using a form of asexual reproduction. It's just a facultative form. It's not their primary mode of reproduction, but it's something that they seem to have the ability to switch into, and not infrequently. So I get emails on an almost weekly basis from ball python breeders and boa breeders about cases of parthenogenesis, and they asked me if I would test the samples for them. I no longer do that, just because I I never charged for it generally. And it takes too much time for whenever the answer is right there in front of them. With the amount of morphs that are available and our understanding of heritability of morphs, we can tell straight away by the sex of the offspring and by the captive care or the captive story, but that the breeders give us.
Travis, you had Partho babies this year, right?
Yeah, well, one.
For ball pythons?
Yeah, I brought a piebald female to a compound heterozygote in the black pastel group, and I got a straight piebald female out of it. 4-egg clutch, only 1 egg went to term.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's another thing that when people argue, I'm always amazed. They talk about how you always see someone go, well, it can't be parthenogenesis. It's not that common. And then every time I hear Warren, it's like, no, it happens all the damn time.
If I used to have a webcam that I could move around, but I don't now. But literally 30 feet from me in my lab, I've got a huge chest freezer that is just full of parthenogens. And I mean, bottom to top full of parthenogens. Reticulated pythons, Burmese pythons, blood pythons, ball pythons, children's pythons, Amazon tree boas, boa constrictor, boa imperator, boa sigma, Dumoril's boas. They're kind of cool because they got a different determining system. There are a bunch of pit vipers, a bunch of rattlesnakes, a king cobra.
That's cool.
A bunch of stuff. Yeah, up maybe 10 years ago I would have thought it's uncommon, but now it's not uncommon. I don't believe it's uncommon at all. Many people overlook it. Many people, when they produce them, either don't know that they produce them, or they believe that it turns out one of their animals. They think that one of their animals was a recessive, a heterozygote. They didn't know about it. And many of them will just sell the offspring for regular prices, and the offspring never do well. I don't have any live parthenogens anymore, but I've got about 130, I think it is, in the freezer in there from lots of different litters and clutches.
Well, Chris Eaton said one that he's a big fan of both y'all, because although I enjoy those interviews just because I know Chris, I know everything you said completely confused him. It was great.
Hey, we are not judging people that struggle with.
I said he wants to know if you were surprised that Barczak was so shocked that his Partho anaconda died.
I'm never surprised that Barczak is shocked at anything, but especially not that a parthenogenetic anaconda died. All of the parthenogenetic anacondas that have been produced have died. So they were produced in the West Midlands Safari Park just after Mark O'Shea left there. I think 3 of them, they all died. There were 2 published. There was a paper, I think, published from Japan. Those ones were dead. I've got yellow anaconda parthenogens chilling out in the freezer. So yes, I wasn't. Well, think about what parthenogenesis is producing. It's producing an animal that's essentially homozygous across its genome. All right. So any of these little, any of these genes that are mildly deleterious, not necessarily.
What does that mean?
Not necessarily not great, right? You don't want to have them in a homozygous form.
Yes, elementary.
I got lots of them in a homozygous form, and that ends up.
I'm grading context clues right now, so that tells you what level my brain is on. Right. Okay.
We see a lot of in the pit vipers, for example. We see a lot of deformities. In the boas and the pythons, we don't see a lot of deformities, but they just don't last long. My oldest parthenogenetic boa lasted until about 9 years. She bred at 8 years, produced offspring that were healthy. She produced 5 healthy offspring and 4 stillborns. And then she never recovered, and she died a year later. Same thing with a ball python. It did the same thing, a parthenogenetic ball python. They just don't do well. Most of them get to about 2 years of age, and then they just crap out. They don't grow very well, but then their metabolism just fails on them. They'll eat, but they just don't put on any weight.
So Brandon,
can y'all see the comments first of all?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So Brandon Peach asked a question that I was.
So.
Brandon asked a question that I was currently thinking, because I know growing up, whenever you hear Partho, it was always, well, it's when the male population is low, the females will have babies to give a better chance of being able to have other individuals that can breed. But with that said, we've already said that a lot of Partho babies die fairly early. So is that still kind of the belief that they're trying to boost population numbers, or is it something else?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. One is, well, you know, they might just survive, and even if they themselves die after reproducing, then they may have produced several offspring that can then hopefully grow on and then mate with a male that comes into the population over time. The pit viper ones are a little bit better in that if they do produce a viable, pit vipers produce male parthenogens, boas and pythons produce female parthenogens, except for the Madagascan boas, they produce males because they're a different sex determining system. So if you're a pit viper and you produce parthenogenetically and you produce a healthy male offspring, within 2 years, that male should, if it survives, should be able to breed back with the female.
Yeah.
And we've been close to testing that, and we're getting close again. I know I've got some colleagues and collaborators that have male parthenogens growing up that they're going to breed back to the mother that produced them. The other thing is it's not a detrimental trait, right? So when you think about natural selection, traits that are detrimental should be selected out in the population, right? So if they result in blindness, then that's not a trait that animals necessarily will benefit from, and over time that should be selected against. Those that are beneficial, allowing it to survive in different temperatures and so on, should be selected for, and therefore that would increase in frequency in the population. But something like parthenogenesis, that if a female produces parthenogenetically, well, it doesn't kill her, right? Yeah. So therefore the next year or 2 years later, if she survives, she can produce sexually, and therefore it's not a detrimental trait. So therefore it's not necessarily going to be selected against. And sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, we see it. It's not just in snakes we see it. We see it throughout the phylogeny of birds. So, in fact, pigeons were the first species ever to have been shown to be able to reproduce parthenogenetically. It's extensive in poultry. So there's a lineage of turkeys that have a high capacity to produce parthenogenetically. Chickens can do it. Chinese quail can do it. There's a new paper coming out on California condors that can do it, and then it's widespread throughout sharks and so on as well, and some other species of fish. So it's not necessarily a rare trait. It's just it occurs in certain groups of organisms that lack a genetic mechanism that requires a male and female contribution. So.
I know the answer to this, but Lavissa in our chat asked, can a snake mate with a male and still have a partho hatch out? And I know that was kind of absolutely. The most recent guy on Facebook that wanted to argue, so that's impossible. Mm-hmm. But
it definitely can. Yeah, I had somebody contact me recently, a ball python breeder that had a male mate with several females, and those several females produced parthenogens. I was contacted by somebody 2 or 3 years ago that was the same case. A male bred 3 females and all 3 females produced parthenogenetically, which makes us question what's the driver of it, what causes parthenogenesis to occur.
So in those situations, did they also sexually produce babies, or were they only partho babies in those clutches?
In those, they were all partho.
So is there a chance that the mating triggered it, since there was no actual, maybe his sperm doesn't work or whatever, it triggered the partho and the females since they were ready?
Well, that's the thing. We don't know that the male produced non-viable sperm. That's the first thing that you need to look at. But in birds, there's some evidence that parthenogenesis can be triggered by viruses. It's thought to be a single. So from the work on turkeys, it's thought to be a single recessive trait. So. It's something that could increase in the population through inbreeding. It's something that can increase extensively in captivity, because with snakes, we inbreed the shit out of our snakes, right?
Yeah, and it's a fairly small gene pool.
Yeah, I've been breeding. The data that we have coming back on whole DNA, whole genome sequencing of boas and pythons shows very little genetic diversity in captive populations of captive individuals. Populations are diverse, but people aren't necessarily breeding in a diverse way. They're buying a pair of individuals from a clutch or a litter and breeding those together, and then breeding offspring from those together. They're not necessarily doing these outbreeding projects. So in captivity, people tend to inbreed extensively because reptiles seem to be relatively resilient to the effects of inbreeding. But with that, you will then see these recessive traits. These, if parthenogenesis is indeed a recessive trait, you'll see that increasing in frequency, and indeed that's what we're seeing. But what we don't know is that prior to 1997, 2000, whenever we started to really see morphs hit the market, people were producing ball pythons, Burmese pythons, and so on that weren't morphs. They wouldn't necessarily have known that they were producing parthenogens because everything was normal anyway.
Yeah,
so it could have already been there. My feeling is that it already was there, and people are just not noticing it.
because the first reptile I remember really hearing about doing partho was Komodo dragons, like in zoos.
Yeah, that was in 2005, I think it was 2006 in London. But
In London, yeah.
So like you just walk in and there's babies, and you weren't expecting babies.
I've got tissue from parthenogenetic Komodos around here somewhere.
Just to have.
I've got a parthenogenetic Salvatori, Piranha Salvatori in the freezer.
So why do you keep all of these? Like just
So we can use the tissues for other stuff. It's better to have this kind of bank of tissues that we can delve into over time than not to have it.
so for like future studies and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the first records in reptiles were actually in 1997. A really good friend of mine, Gordon Shewitt, people who breed carpet pythons and hog islands and Brazilians might know the Shewitt line animals. Gordon Shewitt was a professor, assistant professor. He now works for Bob Ashley over at the Chiricahua Desert Museum. But he's a very, very skilled evolutionary biologist that works primarily on reptiles. He and Steve Mackesy, who works on venom, and a bunch of other people put out a paper on 2 species of Thamnophis, so two species of garter snakes and 2 species of rattlesnakes that produced parthenogenetically. And in that same journal, there was a paper on file snakes, the Acrocortis file snakes that produced a parthenogen. And I know those 2 papers were proved to be really difficult to get published. They got bounced around lots of journals because the authors didn't believe them, or the editors didn't believe the story. The reviewers didn't believe that it could occur.
It's early Facebook.
Yeah, and it finally did. They finally did get published, and then there was a gap until 2004 with snakes, whenever a paper came out in Burmese pythons, and then there was a gap again, pretty much until 2010, whenever I put out the paper on boas. There was a couple little ones before then, but pretty minor. And then after that, it kind of everything hit the fan, and we saw a lot of papers come out from a lot of different people on parthenogenesis and snakes now, and widespread across the snake phylogeny. So everything from the boas and the pythons right the way through to the advanced kind of snakes.
So Travis, I want you to answer this question for Lavissa, since you had it happen recently. She asked, so if you've bred a female and she has a partho clutch, how did you know that the egg that hatched was partho? What is it that gave it away for you?
Like I said, the big thing for me was that I bred it to what was essentially a super form, and the animal I got out didn't carry either of the genes from the father. So that just should not be possible. And that's how a lot of these partho clutches get identified, is essentially what would be considered impossible combinations or impossible phenotypes. If you've only got one animal that is a het and you produce visuals from it, or if you've got one copy of an incomplete dominant gene and you know that the other animal doesn't have that, and then all of a sudden you've got a super form coming out of it. So you see these things like that. The other kind of tip off is reduced clutch viability, eggs not making it to full term, and all of the offspring being females in the case of the boas and the pythons.
And then I was going to actually point this out. And then Lavissa asked, so if it was normal, you'd have no way of knowing. So we really know partho because of morphs, I would assume. That makes it so much easier to figure this out.
We know it occurs widespread because of that, but that wasn't the case for the first instances. The first instances were recorded in captive situations where females have been held in isolation for very long periods of time, 4, 5, 6 or longer years and never been exposed to a male. In fact, I had a paper in, I don't know, maybe 2011, where we showed evidence of both long-term sperm storage and of parthenogenesis in pit vipers. And I then went back and reviewed a lot of the literature on sperm storage in snakes that have been published over the last 50 years or 60 years. And in most of the instances, they actually had the characteristics of parthenogenesis. And in many of them, they even mentioned this could be parthenogenesis, but we don't think so. And they go on to talk about sperm storage. And in fact, the longest record of sperm storage, I think, is 83 months. And it's in a file snake, an Acrocordus file snake. And when you go back and read that paper, it was a single male offspring and a bunch of infertile ova, and it ties in perfectly to parthenogenesis. So that's not, even though that's commonly cited as the longest case of sperm storage in vertebrates, I don't believe that. I think the longest is the 6 years so far for the rattlesnakes.
So there's no, I mean, I guess unless you do serious genetic testing, there's no way to tell if it's sperm storage, right? You're just assuming,
Right.
oh, these two things bred and it had a baby 3 years later. It's got to be sperm storage.
Yeah, and the testing's not complex, not for that kind of thing. While I still accept samples from species that we haven't recorded parthenogenesis in before, and it's not necessarily saying that I'm going to record parthenogenesis in them. We can use them for other things. But there are people like Ben Morrill with his company. I don't know if this company is still going, that's doing a lot of, or had been doing genetic testing, like sex determination and so on. They can do parentage studies in many of the snakes, and they can tell you whether it's a male was involved or whether it's parthenogenesis, and you can do it pretty cheap. I just don't have the time for that anymore. My lab doesn't work on parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis stuff is all my kind of hobby research that I do in the evenings or the weekends. My lab is a totally different focus than that there, but I just do it for fun.
So you study parthenogenesis for fun.
Yes.
Travis bakes.
All of my reptile stuff is all for fun. So all the Python phylogenetics that we do, and all the sperm storage, and all the parthenogenesis work, it's all just for fun.
I'm so glad there are people like all of you in this world.
Warren also gets to store snakes at work because they let us store snakes at work.
Well, this wall behind me is going to change. This is going to be a floor-to-ceiling wall of emerald tree boas and Corallifers bergeri. I've been waiting 5 months for my cages to arrive, and I'm still waiting. I've got a shipping kind of tracking number, but they haven't been picked up yet. So I've got a whole stack of radiant heat panels and Herpstat 6s, but they're not here yet.
Oh, that's going to be awesome. I want an emerald so bad. I don't ever want to hold it. I don't ever want to touch it. I just want to stare at it.
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of them. The ones that I've got here are all the anaconda phase, so the green and black, the black kind of ovals going down their back. All the ones that I've got at home are just standard kind of northern emeralds. But they're two different groups. These ones are all wild caught.
Yeah.
Whereas the ones at home are all captive bred. So they'll never meet.
Is there a definite attitude difference between the wild caught and the captive bred?
No, they're all assholes.
We're not gonna put you on the spot, but it has been asked why you didn't order from Lone Star Reptile.
Because I don't make cages.
Because he doesn't make cages.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. There you go, Louisa.
Yeah, these are all 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot and 2 foot cubes that I'm getting.
That's really cool.
14 of them arriving.
That's going to be an awesome wall.
Yeah.
All right. So I know that you posted questions on Facebook.
I did, but I had something else to ask. I forgot it now that you.
Well, look, pull it up on Facebook. It'll come back
up.
to you.
I did. So I posted just get everybody's questions they have about genetics. And if anybody's in the chat, you can feel free. And if I've missed yours, please repost it. I'm sorry because Lavissa kept saying a lot of stuff and everybody's stuff.
You leave her alone. She was becoming educated. And I actually am retaining some of the information that was mentioned tonight.
We'll test you again tomorrow. We'll see how it goes.
But right now it's making sense.
So the question was, what reptile genetics concepts do you have the hardest time understanding?
All of them.
Well,
the answer is all of them.
What I find funny about the reptile hobby and genetics is that you took people that barely passed high school science, and now they're out there throwing out genetics terms and speaking genetics about ball pythons and this and that. And it's weird because I'm not saying genetics is a hard concept to understand, but it's definitely one that takes a little bit of understanding of how it works.
And I
to
think
understand.
I've talked to Travis about this before. I think my issue is that this is not part of my everyday life in the sense that I don't breed anything. This is 100% y'all. Like when you and Robert start talking about morphs, I'm just like, whoop, and it goes in one ear and out the other. And if Logan gets started talking about stuff, it all goes over my head. Like, and it's not that I don't understand it and I'm not intelligent enough to understand it. It's that my brain can only hold so much information, and that's not something that my brain needs to retain. I think that's my problem.
That's your only problem?
Shut your face, boy.
Oh, anyways.
Fighting words.
So I want to read some of these, and some of these, I'm going to read what they wrote, and then I'm going to try and decipher what they asked. Angel said polygenics, more specifically in Borneo short-tailed pythons, understands that there are many genetics in play, but doesn't understand that's how it can be made consistent enough to produce morphs. So I don't know which one of you I feel more comfortable with polygenics. I know it's different than just simple basic genetics. Like,
it's simple basic genetics, just compounded.
Yeah.
Polygenetics is that you have a bunch of different genes that are contributing to a look, and you can think of it like dogs. A Labrador looks like a Labrador because there's a whole bunch of genes that have been selected to make it look like a lab. And a poodle looks like a poodle because you've selected for different genes that make it look like a poodle. They're still all dogs. And, when you breed a lab and a poodle together, you kind of get that mixing and matching and shedding of some genes. Some of those genes from the poodle that are really dominant stay dominant in the cross. Some of the genes that are dominant from the lab stay dominant, and then you just maintain that through selective breeding.
But it just takes more time to be able to select for a look that is more consistent, because think of it like, say 5 genes were involved in one of these traits, and think of those genes as just like light switches. You can have those all in lots of different orders. So you could breed animals to different animals, and you get these all in different orders. You're trying to get them all to be up or all to be down, whatever, right? It just takes a lot of breedings to actually say, right, this one is up, and that one's up, and that one's up, and that one's down, and I need to breed this to something else to try and get them all to the level that you want. So it's just adding complexity to the breeding. And sadly, because you can't turn around and say, well, this bit's a recessive and this bit's an incomplete dominant and so on, it makes it more difficult to then select animals that you then want to breed back to each other or back to a parent to then hopefully generate less variation in that trait, and therefore more consistency for a look.
So it takes constant selection for it. I mean, if you're just doing it haphazardly, like Warren said, if you've got those 5 switches and the trait you're looking for is 4 up and 1 down, if you just randomly take a baby out of there and you don't know if it's 4 up and 1 down and start breeding it, well, it may be a 3 up and 2 down.
Yeah, it's a whole process of taking one baby because I really like how this looks, and that look may not be genetically what you're really going for.
Right. Or it, because it's getting influenced somewhere else. But once you've, got those 3 up and 2 down, and then you start breeding into something else, well, you've lost that 4th one being up. So then to get it back, you either have to go back to the parent or loop back into a previous iteration. So you can dilute yourself away from what you want by not maintaining that strict and tight selective pressure.
Well, I know Angel talked about Borneo short-tails, but the easiest way I always think about it is like with Crested Geckos, because Crested Geckos are relatively new-ish to the hobby. I mean, they've been around for a little while, but they've really blown up, and almost everything except for like 2 traits in there are polygenetic. It's you're going for a look, and you have no idea if that baby will come out looking that way, and then so many people are buying and breeding them to this to try to get a look. I think it's gonna be a while before I can guarantee this is how it's gonna come out, because everybody's breeding so many different Crested Geckos together that, like you said, genetically, this baby may look the way you want, but when you breed it to this other one that looks the way you want, genetically doesn't match up. It's not the same thing. So Crested Geckos are a very weird thing to me when I see someone charging like $500 for a Crested Gecko, and then you have no idea how the babies are going to look from that thing. So
yeah, I've kept and I've bred short tails in the past, and I keep caramel Sumatran short tails. But they're consistent because it's a recessive trait. But with the Borneo shorttails and so on, I've got no idea. I look at these animals and I'm like, yeah, that looks great, but I've got no idea unless it's a granite or a marble or an albino, I've got no idea. They all just look,
Yeah. I like my simple recessive or incomplete dominant stuff.
Yeah. And Crested Geckos are the same for me. If it's not red or whatever other color, I'm like, I got no idea.
But it's like, I know lily white is like the one thing I do know is a recessive trait, or at least incomplete dominant.
Incomplete dominant, right?
Incomplete dominant. I knew it was it falls into one of the lines of you can easily track what's going to happen.
And it's got a
incomplete dominant, soft scale or small scale, or I can't remember what Cabinet is calling it, is incomplete dominant, and then there's an axanthic line that's recessive.
Yeah.
I did see that on a video recently from Daytona. Someone showed that one that was recessive. But everything else is just, it feels like a crapshoot. Let's try to read. Oh, someone said Mike Wilbanks recently posted a video about controlling the amount of yellow in superfires using cinnamon and inchy.
That was Darren Watson.
Darren Watson said that. I guess the only problem is you start mixing other genes in. Like, if it's early on in the project, I think it's probably pretty hard to tell what's actually doing it, right? Especially with ball pythons, because unless you have bred them.
I mean, it would make sense with cinnamon and enchi in that regard, because
I know enchi light and stuff.
One, they're allelic, and they're sort of allelic in the opposite direction. Cinnamon is a melanin increasing mutation.
I get lost on allelic ball python morphs. I don't know what all goes, and it kind of goes. So,
I don't know what that A word you just said.
I'll just tell you. We'll have them
okay. I'll loop back to that for you. But
well, Lance Kirkman said the one thing he was wondering about genetics is why everyone is an expert in allelics, which
I'm assuming it has something to do with alleles.
Do you know what an allele is?
Once upon a time, I did. I've heard you mention it before.
Okay,
don't ask me stuff like that on the spot. What's wrong with you?
I'll let the geneticist explain allelic, because again, there's a lot of allelic stuff in ball pythons.
I'm using my context clue.
Are you grading papers?
It's a very strong possibility. This is a judgment-free zone, Warren. So I actually used all of you guys in my class the other day as an example, because I'm teaching context clues to third graders right now. And I was telling them, I'm like, guys, what do you do when you read something and you don't know what to do? And they were like, well, that never happens to you. I'm like, that happens to me all the time when I read stuff about science. And then I have to use my context clues to figure it out, or I have to go ask some friends. And they thought that was so funny that I could admit that I don't always know everything. Not about you, though. I know everything about you, James. So don't think that applies to you.
All right. So Travis, if you want to circle back to allelics so we can.
I have a feeling it has to do with alleles. Am I right?
Yes, but you don't even know what an allele is.
But
an allele is just a different form of a gene. An easy way to think of it is like the suits in a deck of cards. You've got spade, you've got heart, you've got club, you've got diamond.
Okay.
If I've got the ace of spades, that's the main gene. And then I have the ace of hearts, the ace of diamonds, and the ace of clubs. Those would be alleles. So they're different forms, but they're still all the ace.
Gotcha. I could have told you it had to do with genetics. Does
and then
count?
In ball pythons, you have snakes that, when bred together, give you white snakes, and everybody goes crazy for it. I know that.
I like the black snake.
Yes, and that's the superfires. But with Wilbanks saying that he can use cinnamon and enchi to affect the amount of yellow, like I said, that makes sense, because cinnamon tends to damp the yellow down and increase the melanin factor. So that would reduce the yellow that you would be producing. And then enchi does the opposite. It tends to damp down some of the melanin and bump up yellow pigmentation, the xanthans. So that would then increase the yellow background.
And John Grant, I have no idea why he's a pansy.
I'm not. Anyways. No, John Grant doesn't mind getting bit. I'm smarter and choose not to get bit when I can keep from getting bit. That's not a pansy. That's just knowing
wouldn't
that
hold a
I
scorpion.
don't want to get bit. No, I'm not holding a scorpion. They sting you. Anyways, next. Dominic said, why everyone keeps using the term co-dominant, especially when they know it's incomplete dominant.
Because they're Muppets.
I'm going to have to agree with Warren on that one.
If you
So-
can't turn around and it's a Muppet.
Can I ask where you're from, Warren?
We already had that
You
question.
already have to come
Belfast,
Son of a
Northern Ireland.
bitch, did I
Belfast,
miss
you
it?
went downstairs to get books. He's from Ireland.
Okay.
The northern
Damn.
part.
The nor-
Was that? But that wasn't what we were
It's-
recording.
It's its whole old country.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Hey, everyone at this table, one of us has lived in Europe.
You were 5.
Two of us, kind of.
I've been there twice as an adult.
Jim lived there.
You were 5.
Still lived there, and I had to wear a stupid little uniform to go to school, and it was foggy. I remember that much.
Where was it? Where were you?
England. I couldn't tell you where in England.
His parents were in the
But
military.
he's an expert on it.
I am.
James thinks he's an expert on everything.
I tell my kids that all the time. I'm the most important person in the room in my classroom.
Oh my god.
Make sure they know it too. Oh, anyways. But yeah, no, the term codominant goes back to, again, I tell you, everybody that barely passed high school science is now a genetics expert with their corn snakes and ball pythons. And that term got used 20, 30 something years ago. And everybody's like, yeah, let's keep going with that.
Well, where the problem lies very simply in the fact that you have a bunch of people that are YouTube influencers and they use the term incorrectly. And if they started using the term correctly, you're going to see a complete change in how people talk about it. The fact that you've got big readers that are still calling things codominant, and they might just wash it over them, it's just they don't see a problem in it, but it's totally incorrect.
Yeah.
I can verify that they don't see a problem with it because I've heard at least 3 of them say, I know I'm using the wrong term, but I don't care. It's what I've always used. And my answer to that is, well, you should care.
Yeah, if you turn around to them and they've got their line of whatever morph and you call it a whatever, like the standard morph that's about, they'd have a shit fit.
Yes.
It's the exact same thing. They're too ignorant to be able to turn around and say, you know what? No, actually, I am wrong, and maybe I need to change, and that will help educate, because they all go on about their YouTube channels being for education, and in that case, they're not educating. So
Yeah. And I definitely called hypoboas for the longest time codominant. I don't anymore, but I mean that's what they were called for forever when I got in the hobby. And then I really looked at it. I was like, well, that's not how that works. That's not codominant.
And in fact, the paper that showed that was written by Gordon Shewitt, who I mentioned earlier on, a really good friend of mine. He and Rich Eiley, who had salmonboa.com.
Oh yeah.
So they, through hundreds of breedings, showed that it was an incomplete dominant trait.
And I think maybe Travis, we've talked about before, there's like no codominant traits in snakes, right?
There are
Not that we're aware of.
no proven codominant traits.
Yeah. So it's just lingo that's hung around and they refuse to change.
And what's also interesting is you see in boas and pythons, there are a lot of incomplete dominant traits, but in corn snakes, there are very few incomplete dominant traits.
Really?
Yeah.
That's true. I think about it. Yeah, it's all.
It's like that with most colubrids. There are
we'll
aren't
switch.
as many
Yeah, there can be
incomplete dominant traits in colubrids.
Yeah.
And that's just got to be, I assume, a branch in the evolutionary tree. They branched off at a certain point, and whatever branched off didn't have those traits. John Grant says hypo and motley are allelic in boas. I did not know that, and I actually have hypos, but I did not know they were allelic.
That's why you can't get a super hypo motley or a hypo super motley.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, like I've never seen that. That does make sense. Brandon Millichamp said the one thing. He said morphs. Maybe it's because he's not a morph hunter. People tell me morphs. And he's like, I don't know what that means, but it sounds cool. Morphs are tricky. I think it's a little easier now. The internet has made one thing easier is that at least we're all calling certain things the same thing. I remember getting into the hobby in the early 2000s, and ball pythons were horrible about this. You would have like the same thing on the East Coast and the same thing on the West Coast, called two completely different things because two people bred them and they wanted to have their own thing. And I think that's one thing the internet has made that a little bit better, I hope. But morphs are tricky. How do y'all feel? I know you've got Warren, you've got the emeralds and all. Are you big into, you're not really big into morphs. I've seen some of the boas and stuff you do. That's not really morph stuff, more locale stuff.
Yeah,
right?
no, I got a lot of localities, but I got a lot of locality morphs. I've got maybe 70 or 80 boas, and they're all, there are very few that are actually wild type. Most of them are forms of albino, anathrystic, motley, Inca. Yeah, most of my stuff are actually morphs, and in fact, all of my Amazon tree boas are all morphs. All of my children's pythons are morphs. What else have we got? My blood python, my short tails are morphs. I got a lot. They're just variants of a wild form. So if they are something that deviates from the wild form that is under genetic control, so some level of heritable trait is what we should define a morph as.
Travis, you do morphs on the ball python side, right? Everything else you don't really. You got the kukris. There's no morphs of kukris.
But that was, I mean, I wasn't specifically breeding for the morph. I was curious as to what it could do. But, you know, there's still some work to be done with it to figure out completely what it is. But at this point in time, I can say that it's at the very least a simple dominant trait.
Those little snakes are weird.
Yes, they are. Little shits.
That's another one. Like, I don't want to handle it because I don't want to get bit because they've got those fucked up teeth that will just stab you.
Yes.
Yes. That's not my thing. I'm assuming that's Darren that asked that question.
Yep.
Darren says, so we're often taught that pythons lay eggs and boas give live birth, but that isn't true across the board. If that's the case, then what truly separates them? I don't know if either one of y'all, what is a true difference between a boa and a python?
Do you want to handle that one, Warren?
I don't know, about 50 million years.
I'd imagine it's the branch at which they split off. But.
Yeah, they branched. Yeah, they did. They deviated quite a long time ago. There's lots of different things that they shared common traits, like, you know, thermal pits. But then we see thermal pits and pit vipers to a different extent. You know, we commonly divide them based on egg laying or live bearing, but we also see kind of the switching occurring, and some of the pythons will produce live babies, and some of the boas will produce eggs. So it's just they're just different branches of the evolutionary tree of snakes.
To me, the weirdest branch is Madagascar, because it's
really weird.
You've got all these boas in the Americas. You've got these sand boas in parts of Africa, and then it really just seems like pythons from Africa over to Australia, except for this one weird ass pocket on an island that has boas.
Yeah, it's weird. But the other thing that's weird about them is that you know, we've shown that boas and pythons have XY sex chromosomes. Dumoril's boas, and we believe Madagascan ground boas and very likely Sanzinia have ZW sex chromosomes, just like the advanced snakes. So they're it. But boas and pythons, they evolved XY sex chromosomes independently of each other. And we don't know what happens further down the kind of phylogeny of snakes. So boas and pythons are weird. Madagascar is weird in terms of the animals that are on it.
Have you looked at Candoya in that grouping as well?
No, but we're about to.
So the Dumerals and the Candoya seem to be fairly close to each other.
I've got parthenogenetic Candoya arriving with me soon. They are, well, in vials of ethanol. But yeah, I think they're another one that would be really interesting. We're about to do a big study revising the phylogeny potentially of Candoya. Once COVID's over and we can start to do trips out to Fiji and stuff to sample.
I could definitely see where those are related. Like, if you look at the head structure of some of the Candoya and you look at the head of a Dumerals, because the head of a Dumerals is boa-like, but at the same time it's not. It's got that very like angular nose, and it looks very similar to some of the Candoya.
Yeah, and the Madagascan ground boas are the same. But then you look at Sanzinia, and I've got green Sanzinia here, and those things are just insane. You know,
I want those so bad.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Those things are. We really got hosed here because I've heard before. Like you go to Europe and that green Sanzinia every fucking way, and they don't have the Mandarin ones.
No, they do. They got both of them.
Do they?
Yeah, they got both.
Yeah,
greens are quite common. People seem to be more successful at breeding greens in Europe, but you got both of them.
They're just so awesome. When I worked at the zoo, I had an opportunity. I got the list of like reptiles that you could get from other zoos, and there were 2 Sanzinia on there. I had nowhere in the zoo for them to go on display. Mm-hmm. I told my boss, I was like, "Yeah, we need those."
Yeah,
and we got 2 Sanzinia, and everybody's like, "Why do we get these?" I was like, "Because I wanted to play with them."
Great. And the weird thing is that they're the snakes that I look at least in all of my animals. I feed them, kind of ignore them.
Why?
I don't know. I love them.
Well, I didn't know if there was like a reason. Like, did
Because they turn to stone if
they
he
do
looks at them.
better
Oh,
if you
they're
leave
nature.
them alone? Like,
No,
I mean, James had a snake that wouldn't eat if like the light was on in the room. So I
no,
mean,
they're really hardy. They do really well. No, they just maybe I don't know. Yeah, maybe once I move them into the new cages, then that'll be a different story. But
They but I hear they're misleading. I hear they're not overly, and I kind of had experience that they weren't overly arboreal, even though they're a big green snake. But they're not like emeralds or green
no,
trees.
they're not
where
like
they can-
emeralds. But you provide a lot of branches, and they will use them.
But they don't. I never had them like they
Won't
definitely
perch.
do the perch. Yeah,
No, they won't do that there now.
which is a shame because they have that awesome looking head that if they would just perch like an emerald would be amazing.
Kind of cool. Yeah, like mine tend to just like kind of sit in some kind of ball
Yeah,
in the corner, like arboreally, but it just kind of looks like a mess, and the head's buried right in the middle of it.
yeah, it's a
You know.
tree ball python.
Yeah, but they're neat because they also do that ontogenic color change. So
Yes.
the green start off red or orange, and then they'll change over the space of a couple of years. You know, they're certainly slower to change than emeralds, but they're really cool. Yeah, I do like them. I think they're awesome. So
Yeah, I've always loved the boas on Madagascar, and thanks to Travis, I have a Dumerals again.
cool.
She is awesome looking.
she's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And
The one
thanks
that y'all have,
to
Robert.
thanks to Travis, Robert now has 1,700 Dumerals.
Yeah, because my wife fell in love with the one when it was in my house, and now we have 1, 2, 3,
6, 7,
4, 5, 6, 7,
7.
and one more.
They had none when you sent me that Dumerals, and now they have 7 adults.
That first one that y'all got though was or is
The massive one,
absolutely.
she's huge.
stunning.
She's like 8 foot. It's an 8 foot Dumerals.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
shed like
They produce big babies. They were expensive in the UK whenever I lived in Northern Ireland, and they went out of fashion a little bit because we treat CITES animals differently in the UK and Europe. So a CITES one animal like a Dumerals. Once they're born, you have to get them microchipped, and you have to get basically a permit for each animal, an ID from the government for each animal, and that costs money. So people they went out of fashion because people are out of kind of the spotlight because people were just sick of having to do that there.
See, I think Morphs killed them here because I remember when I was younger, they were cheap. They were like $125, and now they're like $700.
No, they came down again. I saw them for
They come
about
back down?
35 and 300 this year, but that's just COVID that's COVID prices. Everything went up because of COVID, so
You don't see them as much,
but
and for me,
it's cycles, right? So if people aren't breeding them, then they'll become expensive. And then what's happened now, a bunch of people bought them and they'll breed them and they'll cycle down again.
Yeah.
Just like you see with Mexican black king snakes, just like you see with Brazilian rainbow boas, they all cycle. So
I think the gestation on those guys also throws a lot of people off just because they hold on to those babies forever. Compared to like a red tail where
Your rainbow does the same thing.
what is a gestation? Dumeral rainbows are like 117 days because I got to grab.
my rainbows went like 6 months. I think Dumerals go like 8. I think it's like 8 months.
Oh, they don't go 8 months, really?
Yeah, it's a long
It's a long
gestation.
one.
I know that Brazilian rainbows are like 117 days post ovulation shed because I've got one due to give birth next month.
Yeah, mine took forever.
And
That's because you're impatient.
Corralis or Corralis tree boas, they've got a relatively long gestation as well. I've never looked into Dumerals. I've never owned them, so I've never.
I can see where it would really throw off somebody who is used to breeding like corns or balls, something where like in 3 months you have babies from birth, from breeding to hatching. And you have to wait 8 months.
But yeah, if you think about it with ball patterns and stuff, there's still, they breed and they ovulate, and about 28 days later they shed. After ovulation, they shed about 2 weeks later. Then about 28 days later, they lay eggs. And then 60 days later, they hatch. So you're looking at 3.5 months, right?
Yeah.
Boas are the same. Once they ovulate, most like Boa Imperator, once they ovulate, they shed normally about 2 weeks later, and then 100. My boas give birth
105.
between 90 and 104 days.
Yeah.
Most of the Central American boas that I have give birth closer to the day 90 to day 95.
I did the same thing John Grant did. I went and looked on Google, and according to an article in Reptiles magazine, they can go up to 9 months of gestation.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
Dumerals.
Yeah, the reason I don't believe that is that it's often from records where people misidentified a pre-ovulation swell. Boas will undergo pre-ovulation swells that people think are ovulation swells. And they can go up, and you think that they're ovulating, they can shed, and therefore people count from there. But it's actually a pre-ovulation shed, and that can occur months before an ovulation swell. And it can vary in intensity depending on whether one ovary or both ovaries are ovulating.
Yeah, and then looking at some other articles, it's 5 months, 4 months. There's no consensus at all.
Yeah, most of the boas are like 100 to 150 days, kind of thing, 140 days.
Yeah, I think my Colombians run somewhere between 105 to 110, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
My rainbows are the longest. My rainbows seem to take about 6 months, is what my female is. Every time she's giving birth, and it's 6 long months.
Yeah, I've got one that I paired them, and I didn't pay attention to them, and then I went on vacation for 3 weeks or nearly 4 weeks, and I came back and there was a shed in the enclosure, and the female was starting to swell. I thought, all right, well there you go. She ovulated, and she shed while I was away. So I'm kind of counting up roughly somewhere. That was mid-June, so I'm expecting July, August, September, sometime in October. And it's October.
I've caught the swell once in my boa, and it looks like they swallow a football. If you catch it at the right time, I mean, they
do.
It's big.
Yeah. Especially if boas aren't obese. If they're normally fed, then the ovulations are really noticeable.
Yeah,
because the ovulation will be both. It'll be both vertical and horizontal, right? So they'll swell at the side, and then they'll go top and bottom as well. So they'll really have that.
So just like in women.
Ovulating woman. I do have 2 children, and I never noticed my wife ovulating like that. So
you just got to pay more attention.
Gosh.
Well, there won't be a 3rd child, so we'll never get to see it again.
Same here.
First case of Partho. Just watch that.
Oh,
no, that doesn't happen in mammals. Don't worry. It can't happen in mammals. So,
goodness.
Going back to the question, I like this one. Jason Miller-Radovich says, "Why in the majority of groups I continue to see people post normals and then ask what morph it is? That's just everybody's hoping they can make money.
That's stupidity, and it's just people fresh in the hobby.
Which makes me feel bad because I have what was given to me by a friend, a normal ball python, and I look at it and I'm like, it doesn't fucking look normal, but I don't want to post it and be like, hey, what is this? Because
that's because you're not used to looking at what a normal ball python looks like.
That's probably true.
Right?
That is true.
And there's a lot of variation in normal ball pythons.
Yeah, I just had to post a picture on the Morph Market community forum. This guy's like, I know this isn't a normal. It looks darker than any normal looks. And I posted up a picture of 2 normals, and one of them is, dark as pitch, and the other one's just bright gold. And I was like, these aren't even extreme examples, and your animal falls right between them, so it's a normal.
I like
way to crush those dreams.
I like
he still doesn't believe you.
It's a super normal.
At that point, it's just worth educating people. At that point, these are new people generally in the hobby, and they're everybody talks about morphs. You go into Morph Market, and it's all about morphs.
Well, and you talk about the YouTube guys, and some of them I like. I like Kabilka, but I mean, he's definitely a morph driven thing, and so people see that and they go, "Well, I want to do that." So with my $20 snake that I picked up off Craigslist must be worth $5,000, and I just got a really good deal.
Yeah. And it does happen. There are times when people, bought animals that were imported. Not as much nowadays, but certainly years ago, people would get animals in that actually were morphs. Obviously albinos and stuff, but xanthics would come in like that. A lot of these kind of Mojave type or black pastel type animals would slip through the cracks. Orange Dream stuff would slip through the cracks. GHI almost slipped through the crack. So they just came in as just normal-ish looking ball pythons. What happened was when people started to really get their head around these different traits or different morphs, they started to look for things that were slightly unusual. And I don't really believe it happens that much anymore. I don't think many people are really going for those kind of really, what did Ralph Davis call them? Like dinker projects?
Dinkers. Well, I wonder how often anybody's actually going down to Florida, opening up a giant crate of ball pythons and picking through them to find the one that looks different anymore versus how they were doing it in the 90s and early 2000s.
Well, the difference is also now in Africa, they have the internet, and those things are pulled out long before they get here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is the guys out in Africa know all this stuff too, so they pick all those ones out before they even get here. So anything that's getting through now is something that's just so stupidly subtle as to basically be, not really that much different than a basic normal.
So
and then they all go to the wholesalers, and the wholesalers, sell their fancy ball pythons.
Fancy ball pythons.
$400 and $500 normals that probably aren't going to prove out.
They're fancy ball python that they rescue from the pet store.
They rescued it when they paid them all the money for it.
Right.
Now that's where the question should be. What exactly is a rescue when you pay for it?
Because I feel, is there a dollar amount, or is any paying for it not a rescue?
Right.
The only way you rescue from a pet store is if you go in and you're like, look, that animal is dying. You need to give it to me so that it does not die. And they give it to you and don't make any money off of it. And that just doesn't happen because...
No.
Yeah, they're about to euthanize it, cut its head off. That's whenever you sweep in and take it. That's a rescue. Everything else is you're just buying from a shop.
Yes.
Yep.
Hey, don't break. Those people rescued their poor danger noodles snoot babies.
What? No. No, sir.
And then they put hats on them. Emily asked, she doesn't understand how 2 brown snakes make white snakes. She says, like, I get it, but like, what in genetics decided, hey, instead of making the pattern and color cleaner, we're just gonna make it white? I know the answer to this one, but I'll gladly let one of y'all try to answer that one.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
You're about to get schooled.
No, I'm not. That is purely randomness. That is genetics. That's randomness. A white snake is random.
I don't know. Dr. Booth's face tells me that's not randomness.
It is a random
I'm
mutation.
loving this.
But obviously, a white snake is not something you find in the wild on a regular basis because that is detrimental to survival.
But she's not talking about in the wild. She's talking about
all mutations come from the wild.
She's asking what is the cause of it. And it's a mutation in the pigment deposition or distribution of that animal.
I'm still not wrong. It's showing up.
The way the pigment is either sent out into the body or the way the pigment is supposed to stick to the body and just doesn't.
And we've talked multiple times on here that white snakes are retarded.
No, they're not.
Well, we talk about, so you've talked about before, we talked about the eye formation in boas, because I saw someone post the other day, they posted a little albino boa, and it's got a small little birth defect on its nose. I was like, it also has bulging eyes. I don't know how you didn't notice that part.
The birth defect on the nose is not a birth defect. It's nose rub. And they're trying to say it was a birth defect. It's just, the eyes are an issue. They were commonly an issue in albino boas, very likely through inbreeding.
Well, and that's why I always hated those. And I've said it before, I hate those. You don't see them anymore, but the bug-eyed leucistic rat snakes, that was a huge thing. Like in the mid-2000s, people would breed them and then sell them as like, look at this thing. It's got awesome bug eyes. I'm like, that's not how it's supposed to look, damn it.
And they did fine. That wasn't a detrimental mutation for them, but
they kept breeding them. Like you'd see people breed for them. I saw one guy with palmettos. Palmetto corns will do that too every now and then. And we talked about Travis. You said
boas will.
Well, that's what we said.
Almost all the leucistics will generate a bug-eye phenotype, and you can probably push one way or the other for it. I mean, you can never really eliminate it because it is part and parcel with that trait. It's because of the way melanin is instrumental in the formation of the eye cups as well. So when you're disrupting the formation of the eye cup, sometimes it's just going to go wrong and the eyes are going to bulge out of the head.
And I'm still, so I told you I had that one super sun glow boa that had bug eyes, and they've gone down, and I was, for a couple of years now I've been like, I'm not going to breed it, but now every time I look at it I'm like, but it's really pretty.
See, you're part of the problem.
I'm not going to breed it, Warren.
Can we just
really
say that one more time? Can we have that on loop?
Part of the problem.
I haven't bred it yet. It's just living in a tub.
That could have been one year.
I need the button. I need that phrase on the button.
Part of the problem.
But only with Warren.
No,
yes.
And I've said it before, and everybody says it. The worst thing that happens whenever we breed snakes is we always produce one that is just about hanging on to life, and it's got an odd pattern or an odd color, and we do everything that we can to save that. Whereas in nature, that thing would be gone within a very short period of time, and that would never be selected for. We also don't select for necessarily animals that feed well and so on, and many people don't cull animals. The reason I have king snakes is that every year I produce animals that have got slight birth defects and so on, and 9 times out of 10 they go into the king snakes.
Yeah,
they make friends, and later on one of them's missing. It must have escaped. Always the little deformed boa.
Is that what you tell your little ones?
Yes, yeah. No, my kids they know all about this shit.
Yeah, no, I know the way Warren thinks.
Warren's like, watch this thing eat this other one.
happening there.
The children of a biologist, they know about death.
They know about everything.
Oh yeah, I know.
We had to have conversations with ours when she went into pre-K, explaining other people don't want to know how snakes have babies.
Yeah.
Because I had to talk to her teacher in a conference to explain we have snakes at home that just had babies. If she's really excited, we've already talked about not talking about this amongst our friends because their parents might not want them to know how it works yet. Like, now you throw people in the mix and she's 10 and she's still like, what? But yeah.
My kids have seen all that. They've seen, whenever I used to keep ball pythons, they've seen eggs hatching. They've seen boas give birth a lot.
Oh, yes. The whole freaking neighborhood knows when we have snakes being born at this house because someone is so loud and excited.
Yeah.
I had snakes born the other day and I did not scream about it. Thank you very much.
Well,
But I also had negative stuff happen at the same time.
You could.
Yeah.
What was born? What did you have?
I had some sand boas that I had a female that I thought she wasn't due for another month or two. And then I opened it up. There were 4 little babies and there were a ton of infertile ovums. It was her first clutch.
Well, here's the other thing. Because it was their first clutch does not mean it's going to be their worst clutch.
Yeah.
That's a common misconception.
I'm telling myself
Evolutionarily, that's the worst thing that could ever happen because the female might not survive to the next time they reproduce. If you look in the wild, most snakes breed on a 2 or 3 year cycle. So that's a long time to wait before they're going to get a chance to reproduce again. So they're going to do everything they can to produce healthy offspring. And in fact, all of the work that my collaborators done on copperheads, bringing in dozens of gravid females, they rarely, if ever, produce slugs. And the only times that we found them producing slugs, really, in any kind of number, is whenever they are producing parthenogenetically. So, and they'll have like 1 or 2 babies and then a bunch of slugs. But this kind of notion that in captivity, the first breeding is not going to be great, you're going to get a high number of slugs or deformed or whatever, that's not the case. That's the female wasn't ready for breeding.
I'll say, do you think that's the case if it's a young female?
The male wasn't, so they weren't cool enough for sperm development, or they were separated before because boas are not good at storing sperm, unlike pythons and rattlesnakes. So you take them out too soon, or the male didn't breed the female close enough to ovulation, then you get issues.
And see, this female, I bred her to 2 males, or at least tried. And I'm pretty sure I know the male was just my straight anery. Because I got 4 babies, they're all anery. And the other one I bred to was an albino het anery. But I'm pretty sure she ripped one of his hemipenes off. And because
I remember when this happened.
Yeah, because when I opened the tub, she's got blood down her back and he's got blood at his vent. And all I can think was, I really hope the other one still works.
Well, just probe it. You'll know once you probe it. But it's not uncommon with boas and with pythons to see blood in a cage whenever they're breeding.
Really?
Yeah.
That was my first time. Although she's also solid white, so it's very easy to see when there's blood on them. But
cool. I like sand boas a lot. I've thought about getting them many times.
I love them.
I just don't need any more snakes.
I love that you're like, I like
Good
sand.
for you for being able to admit that and stick to that.
I'm not sticking to it. I didn't say I'm sticking to it. I'm picking up 7 from the airport tomorrow.
Jesus.
I was helping Logan feed
more
colubrids last night, and our snake room needs some attention. And I walked out and I walked in the bedroom, looked at Rachel. I said, nothing is coming home from this show this weekend. There are 15 corn snakes being shipped to me tomorrow.
Are they leaving tomorrow and coming in Thursday?
Leaving tomorrow, coming in.
Going to the same place?
Yeah.
I have to go to the exact same hub on Thursday.
Oh,
nice. Y'all could ride together.
We're coming from different directions.
Yeah.
Never mind.
I say that every time I go to Arlington. I'm like, nothing's coming home. And the last couple of times I've been good.
I
love how there's a pause there.
I love that Warren's got snakes that everybody, because he's got the Sanzinia that everybody loves. He's got emeralds and all this cool stuff. And then he's also like, I like sand boas. You don't tend to get, because I always get shit for liking sand boas by people that have quote unquote cool
Nobody's going to give Warren Booth shit, James. Come on.
No, apparently
you are not Warren Booth.
Warren
doesn't know what he's talking about.
Frequent those groups.
I'm not in any of those groups on Facebook. That's how I.
What the hell does Warren know about Partha?
Don't care.
Oh gosh.
So,
yeah. Did we make it through our Facebook questions?
Yes. Did you have more questions?
No, I just have my books I want to talk about.
Awesome. Go ahead. I got something that I'll add to that after your book.
So I always proofread. Proofread is not the right word. I always pre-read whatever reptile books that I bring into my classroom because I don't want my kids reading something that is garbage.
Which there's a lot of it out there.
There's so much garbage out there on reptile books. But so the third book that I wanted to talk about is actually must still be in the car because I couldn't find it. But these fun fact file animal adaptation books are really awesome. It's 20 fun facts about amphibian adaptations and 20 fun facts about reptile adaptations because my class pets are coming to my classroom soon and I don't just take them up there. They have to figure out what's coming and they get clues all week and there's books about the animals they have to read about before they come in. And so that's fun. But the one that I really liked, it's part of the Magic Treehouse series.
My daughter loves those books.
Yeah. So the Magic Treehouse books are great. I've read the whole series. There's a bajillion of them out there. But something they just started doing recently was the fact finder books that go along with. It's a companion guide. Mm-hmm. So basically like the one on A Crazy Day with Cobras. There's a companion guide that goes along with that book. So whereas that book is completely fictional, the companion guide is completely nonfiction. And it breaks it down beautifully. And I actually read it in the car this weekend while we were running errands around town. And so I would make James like pause what he was listening to so I could tell him stuff that I read in the book. And
tell me things I already knew.
I mean, I thought it was very interesting. So you had to hear them also. That's how this works in a marriage.
Since when?
Since I said so. So, but it's like if you haven't checked them out and you have kids, I would highly recommend that you check these books out because, again, they're the fact finder books. They're companion guides to the Magic Treehouse, and they work. I mean, they're wonderfully written. They cover a lot of information. This one was all about reptiles, and so it starts out talking about dinosaurs. It left some stuff a little vague for me, just because I feel like it could have clarified it a little bit better, but then it breaks it down into like there's a whole chapter on snakes, and then the snakes gets broken down into more specific species, venomous versus non-venomous. They use venomous versus non-venomous, and then it talks about lizards, and then it talks about turtles and tortoises and the difference between the two. And so it was really great. And it's not often that I come across reptile books for kids that I really enjoy. And this week I just happened to find multiples, which was cool.
Cool.
That was really all I had. So you're looking at me like, okay, what's next?
No, my book related thing actually came from Morelia Python Radio. They have a new episode out. It's about books. I didn't get a chance to listen to all of it. But last week, actually, I think it was on the episode where they talked about blackheads. They mentioned an app for cataloging your books. You scan a barcode or you can manually put it in. It's called Book Buddy. And I've got all these books back here, and I'm always wondering when I go to a bookstore, I'm trying to remember, do I have that book or do I not have that book? So I'm definitely going to go through with this app on Book Buddy and scan every book. So if anybody has a reptile library and you're trying to remember what you have and don't have, there's apps where you can just scan it in, you can pull it up, go, okay, I have that book. I don't have to buy it for the third time, which for some of these cases, I've definitely bought them for like the third or fourth time because I forgot I had them. But I feel like Warren's looking at his 5 million reptile books up there.
I think, yeah. Just trying to think about what books I really like. Some of them at my office at home as well. But
I was listening to them talk about books. They were talking about books that were expensive. Mm-hmm. And I'm holding the Pythons of the World Volume 1 Australia, which my mother-in-law bought. Hey, it's in your hand right there.
Yeah, but
which my mother-in-law bought.
Your copy's probably better.
What do you mean better?
His looks like it's hardback and it has a dust cover. Yours came from a flea market.
And mine was free.
Mine was cheap.
Tracy Parker gave it to me.
Yeah, whatever.
Along with the ball one and along with the other one, the recent.
I've got one of them up there. The other one. Where's the other?
I would like to apologize in advance. It got warm in the podcast room and I opened the door. So now our dog is in here.
I'm being attacked by it.
She loves Robert.
She's just looking at me like this.
She gets so excited when Robert comes over.
Yeah, I have Pythons of Asia and Malaya Archipelago, whatever it is.
That's a good one.
But it was funny to think about the Volume 1, which I got from my mother-in-law from a thrift shop. If you go on Amazon, it's like $600 on Amazon I'm like, that thing's just sitting on my shelf. My snake room. Do I think it's a $600 book? No, and I don't think anybody's gonna pay $600 for that book.
What's really cool is I actually have the a set of proofs from that book as well, and I've got a cool picture from it. Dave Barker gave them to me about 6 weeks ago. We were hanging out in New Mexico at Bob Ashley's place, and Dave gave me this set, and they're really cool. They're the original.
Oh, that's cool.
All the images, all the that you can frame. They're kind of cool.
So you're in a new book that is coming out. You have a part in the complete Carpet Python book.
Yeah, so working on that. I've written stuff for the more complete boa constrictor from Vin Russo. I wrote a part for that. And then I'm working on 2 books myself, but with collaborators that will be part of the complete series.
So let me ask you, you've written a lot of papers as far as like for your job and all that are in depth with your job. What are you more, I don't say proud of, but what do you enjoy more? That or getting to write a section on parthenogenesis for the Carpet Python book or for something for the boa book?
Again, that's just kind of hobby stuff, so that's fun to write and it helps out friends.
Yeah.
Whenever Nick called me up and asked if I could do stuff on that, I was more than happy to do it. So I've already given him sections on parthenogenesis and androgenesis, and I'm working on some additional sequencing for the phylogenetics kind of chapter. So they're fun, they take time, they cost money, but I've done that stuff for free. It's just nice to get a free copy of the book.
I've got to buy that book because the original, you can't buy the original one.
Yeah, I've got it here as well somewhere.
I forget how much it is, but it's like if you try to buy it now, it's insane.
Which one is this again?
People, those prices go a little bit crazy for a little.
Which book is this?
Complete Carpet Python.
Oh yeah, that one's going for about $400.
Oh, you looked it up? Yeah.
I randomly check for it to see if I can ever find a used copy that I can buy for you.
If you look on kingsnake.com, you'll see it pop up there every now and again for about $60.
I'll add that to me. I literally search for
I haven't been on
like
kingsnake.com in probably like 10 years.
Still good. I still look at it every day.
Is it still exactly the same as it did 20 years ago?
Yes. But yeah, there's just no forum stuff anymore, really. I don't know if there are. I don't really go into forums and stuff anymore. I try and stay away from all that stuff. But animals still pop up. In fact, some of my emeralds that I've got here, I got off kingsnake.com.
Really? I never looked at animals on there. I never think to go look at them.
That's the reason I use it.
That used to be the only place before Morph Market and all that. I'd always go with King Snake or Fauna Classifieds, which felt more like the Craigslist of reptiles.
And I still use that. And I bought animals from that as well.
It just always felt shady.
No, I don't think so. I think it's just not an updated platform.
Yeah.
I've sold a lot of animals through Fauna. I've sold one animal through King Snake. Most of it's word of mouth, but.
So this is a question for both of you. Stephen Poole wants to know if you can recommend some genetics books to add to his collection. I'm assuming that means reptile. I'm assuming he doesn't want like.
So it depends on what you want out of it, right? Is it something where you want to think more about Mendelian genetics and understand heritability, or is it a book about genetics? They're very, very different kind of avenues.
I would imagine.
Genetics for Dummies. Is that the book you're writing? That would be fabulous. The two of you should collaborate on that.
It is not.
Just open up the book and he goes, "It's incomplete dominance, you dumbass," and then he closes.
It's all page. That's it.
Because I'm never doing this podcast with her
one
again.
Thing. It says it's incomplete dominance and parthenogenesis is real, and then that's the book. Enjoy.
Well, book wise, I don't really know. What do you think, Travis? Are there any books that you can think of that?
It's, again, like you said, it's kind of what you're looking for specifically. One of the books that I always go back to, although the author has gotten more and more kind of extreme in his days, would be Dawkins' The Selfish Gene. Because at the base level of just the science that he discusses in there, it's very good. But he tends to go on a lot of social diatribes as well. And, as his writing career went on, some of his books now are like 2/3 social diatribe and 1/3 actual science, and so it gets a little bit more tedious to deal with that end of it. I don't know which edition I have, but like an evolutionary biology book or developmental biology book, I think those are very important to have.
That's a great book.
That's a good book. Yes.
Conceptual
Breakthrough
in Evolutionary Genetics.
It's very thin.
I like that. Does that have pictures?
It's written by my academic grandfather, my PhD advisor's PhD advisor, postdoc advisor.
Oh, that's cool.
But it'll go through things like chapter 14, sex chromosomes, and it'll lay down kind of the conceptual revolution, the standard paradigm, and it's one page or one of the pages, and it'll give people an idea of what they're what that means, and also some additional reading if they want to go into it. But
is it written in a way that the average person can, because I know it's definitely a subject where a book can either be written way above people or written at a level they can understand.
Do I need to read it with a dictionary?
Well, it depends on your understanding of basic genetics, but it's a great book. I've offered like graduate seminars using this book before, but then we've then gone and read a lot of the papers that are relating to it. But it's enough to make you, hopefully, to give you that primer to say, oh, right, this is what a sex chromosome is, or this is what inbreeding is, or this is what gene flow is, and so on. That's a really cool book.
I need more. I don't have much genetics wise.
I was about to say you need more.
I need more books. I have found that we live near a half price books, and so now I just go in there every now and then just to see what reptile books they have, and then I buy every reptile book they have for sale on there. So our half price books almost never has reptile books for sale. I found, what did I find? Boas and pythons and other friendly snakes, which was a book that I did not have, and it was an older book.
Oh, it's an old
really
one too.
There.
Genetics in the Wild. That looks good.
It's got the same author.
It's got a frog.
Short chapters on, there's a chapter on sex, pregnancy, and making babies. It's all about
I've done that.
Kingdom and how diverse it can be.
I'm okay with the first one. The other two, I'm past those days.
Evolutionary oddities, parthenogenesis, and it's a good book as well.
I'm too old to start
I
over.
think if people want to read books that are, hopefully should expand their mind. They're good, and they're not gonna kind of make their brain fall out, but they should be good.
And Steven said he just needs a starting point for the rabbit hole, and I think those are probably two really good ones.
I feel like those are probably good ones. Yeah.
Another one that I enjoyed was Sean Carroll's Endless Forms Most Beautiful.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it's got it's got a really good layman's explanation of a lot of the genetics concepts, and he uses a lot of real life illustrations with animals and things.
That's awesome. Steven must have gone searching for it. He found conceptual breakthroughs in evolutionary genetics for $25 to $30, which means
not expensive.
I need to go buy that because that's something I need to add to my collection.
It's not
You can wait a week. So that
John Grant says he's never read a reptile book, and I'm not surprised. He is from Oklahoma. He probably just can't read them.
Lewis, stop it.
Ouch.
I'll find one picture book.
One of the two parties here is in Oklahoma.
He's in Oklahoma, but he's not from Oklahoma.
Yeah, at the moment. Yeah.
He's currently there until someone offers him something better.
I don't think that's how it works when you have a family.
It's how it works.
Well, the family would move as well.
They did go with him. I'm assuming he loves him.
As much as I love Tulsa, I'm not glued to Oklahoma necessarily. So,
if someone gave him a bigger place to house more reptiles and paid him for it,
oh, well, there you go.
No.
As long as you have your priorities.
I want fewer reptiles actually. So, over the next 5 years, I'm gonna collapse down my boa constrictor, boa imperator groups.
I didn't realize you had that many. That's a lot of boas. Although you're doing smaller stuff, so at least it's not a huge amount of space taken up by larger boa species. But
still enough. But I've got, think about it. I've got boa sigma, boa imperator, Brazilian rainbow boas. I've got what other boas? Emeralds, Amazons, Granada black tree boas, Corallus ruschenbergeri, and so altogether I've got about 50.
And the imperator, how many different localities do you have there?
Nicaraguan, Costa Rican, Coral Cay, West Night Cay, Lagoon Cay.
You had hogs?
Hog Island's got those, yeah. And then Boa Sigma, so we've got the Mexican staff.
Isn't the cloud boat? What isn't that supposed to be?
Yeah, I don't have Tamaulipas. I used to have those. I don't have them now. What else have I got? Then I've got python. I've got the caramel Somatin short tails. I've got Dunn's pythons. Oh, I've got the green Sanzinia.
Dunn's pythons. That's one I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, they're fun little snakes. I got a bunch of spotted pythons. That Ryan just gave me a bunch of them. I've got Western hognose snakes. I've got Nelson's milk snakes. I've got Theri coming tomorrow. What else do I have?
Okay, I may have to agree. That may be a lot of that. You may have a lot of snakes.
Yeah, about 140 altogether. And then there's 3 tortoises that arse around the yard. So.
What kind of tortoises do you have?
Redfoots.
I just got my first redfoot.
Yeah,
it's still a baby, but
yeah, they're really cool. I like them a lot. I want to pick up one of the hypomelanistic ones.
I saw that from Daytona. I saw the pictures of Daytona where they had them. But I'm just wondering what they look like as adults. Because I've seen some hypo like tortoises that get a lot darker as adults. I don't know if they'll be that insane.
They're darker a little bit, but they're still pretty evident of being different. Yeah, they're cool. They're still I don't know, like $5,000 each or something at the moment. But
jeez, this is an interesting question. So I'm assuming that's Darren again. This question is for everyone. Is there an age you think you'll stop keeping?
No.
I can't see not having something.
Yeah, I think the collection would reduce a little bit, but I can't imagine ever not having stuff. I've had stuff for 27, 28 years.
I was going to say the only way that I can see James ever not keeping something is if he is not physically able to take care of it.
Yeah, I mean that's where I'd be at. If I'm not able to take care of it, then I wouldn't have it around. But that would be the point.
At that point, you have other things to worry about than your reptile.
Well, and that's those moments when like you see people online going, "I'm getting out of reptiles." I don't know what that's like. I couldn't even imagine what that's like. Even
on our lowest days, it's never been we're going to get rid of everything we own.
I have seen a lot of those posts in the last month or so.
Have I wondered what our life would be like without reptiles? Probably on a monthly basis, but it's not. It wouldn't be our life.
I'm not gonna lie. There's been moments when like I've had over 100 something snakes, and I'm like, this is a lot of work. And then I thought, man, what if I got rid of them? And then my mind goes, yeah, that's stupid. I can't get rid of everything. Like I could definitely whittle down my collection to stuff if down the line if I had to. But yeah, I don't think there's ever an age where I could stop keeping on.
I suppose part of the thing is the number of animals can be a problem depending on how often they need fed. So if you've got 100 colubrids that eat every 5 to 7 days and defecate every 3 times a week and stink, then that's different than having an emerald tree boa or 50 emerald tree or 100 emerald tree boas that eat every 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah,
so that they're definitely 2 different animals in terms of the way you keep. And I've got maybe 12 snakes that require feeding every week. Everything else is on a 2-week to 1 month kind of period of feeding.
Yes, I do love when my boas reach a little older and I can be like, all right, you're getting fed once a month. We're good.
Yeah.
It's a great thing. I can't imagine some of this. Like, that's one reason I've never owned indigos. As much as I'd be like, I'd love to go get an indigo. That's a lot of food and a lot of shit.
That's it. Whenever I had all these corn snakes back in Ireland, and maybe 50 or 60 corn snakes, God, that was just awful. The smell. Feeding them every week, every 5 to 7 days. No.
So is it a bigger deal? I imagine, are corn snakes a bigger deal over there? They've got to be a bigger deal than they are here, right? Like
corn snakes, I think corn snakes are coming back to being really big here.
I think they are too, but for the longest time, we don't tend to put any emphasis on our native stuff really. Now lately, hog noses and corns have definitely grown, but they're still looked at like beginner snakes and stuff like that. I just think around the rest of the world, they're probably not. They're looked as like, I want a corn snake.
I think colubrids are well. I think a lot of the mentality in the UK and Ireland is having a pet snake, not having a pair of pet snakes to breed.
Yeah.
I think that seems to be a very US kind of centered thing. I'm not getting a snake, I'm getting a pair and I'm going to breed them. I think a lot of people keep a greater diversity of animals in Europe and the UK. So they don't just have, 8,500 ball pythons. They'll have colubrids and they'll have boas and they'll have pythons and stuff like that there. But also realize that I haven't lived there in nearly 16 years.
Yeah.
So, I think the market's very, very different now. I don't really follow it back home. I don't really follow it here anymore. But it could have changed a lot, Like I do buy animals from Europe, and I get them shipped over from the Ham or the Houghton show, but I just buy from specific breeders. I don't really look around and see what's for sale. But I think I do see a lot of colubrids, a lot of diversity in colubrids being produced there.
Travis, how many snakes are you up to now?
Just shy of 100, but that's because of all the kukri babies.
So, do you still have all? Have you sold any of those, or how long? What are you waiting to be able to sell them? Like what? How many meals, or how old?
Right now, I'm just being lazy and not listing them. I sent one pair out to Billy, and I got another pair going out tomorrow for Zach.
Our buddy John Grant, someone had posted one, and he's like, I really like these, and he's talking about getting them for somebody. He's like, you do realize Travis Wyman had a crap ton of them this year. If you're just contact him, and you can get little snakes that will bite you, because JT loves to get bit. So,
well, I mean, they're perfect snakes for it. I mean, they come out of the egg ready to bite you.
Sounds like rainbow boas.
That's like rainbow boas. They come out.
Or maybe it's just yours. Yours are always pissy when they come out.
No, that's rainbow boas. Yeah. I imagine emeralds are probably the same way.
I've never been bitten by an emerald. I've been keeping them for 25 years. And really? The babies, like last year's litter, no, they were fine.
So that tells me you need to get an emerald from his line.
I rarely handle any snake that I've got.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to have to go in and wrap these things around my neck, or I can happily observe them and stuff like that.
You don't want to walk into the mall with an emerald around your neck, and
no, I don't walk into the mall. Period. So
we went to the mall for the first time. I don't know how long the other day.
You only went once. I went 2 days in a row with that kid.
That was your own fault.
God bless it.
There was one other thing I posted another thing because I was trying to get together some questions I want to start asking every week to our guests, and here's one that Darren asked that I thought was pretty good. He said, luckily he hasn't had any experience with this yet, but how and when do you find the confidence to assist feed for the first time? Some choose not to assist feed. However, if I spend $500 to $1,000 on or more on a snake, I have to do everything possible to ensure the survival of the animal. So I guess it kind of depends if you produce the snake versus if you buy the snake. But if you buy the snake, you hope it's already eating. But Warren, you talked earlier. I assume you're kind of in the same camp as me. You don't really feed. If it doesn't eat, it doesn't eat.
That's it. And Ryan Young and I have talked about this before. It's kind of like, why, if the animal is not predisposed to eating, is that and that could be something that can be heritable. Is this something that we want to propagate in captivity? And,
oh no.
And it could be a
Warren froze.
It could. Did I? I shouldn't be frozen. Did I freeze?
I'm seeing fine.
Yeah, I can. Oh well.
Everybody's back.
We're back.
I was fine because I could still. I think I was on for. I think you guys.
Yeah, I think you guys had a problem because Warren and I were fine.
I'm on a university Wi-Fi internet system. It's pretty good.
Yeah, you found the one place in Oklahoma that has internet.
Yeah, but I'm just not a fan of propagating animals that aren't doing well. And I think people have to get that into their head that it's not a wise thing to do. Yeah, right. If you spend $500 or $1,000 on an animal and it's not eating, well, you need to go back to the person you got it from, because that's the problem to start off with.
Yes.
But if you produce it, you got to think about what that's going to do in the long run to your line of animals that you're trying to propagate. You're conserving a trait that can be detrimental. It's not necessarily beneficial.
I feel like Travis, you're probably in the same boat, right?
Yes and no.
Boo! I was kidding.
Well, I think it also has to do with the species that you have, because some species are not going to be as, like, you can't just toss them a mouse and call it a day. Like Travis has shit that eats weird shit.
Yeah, and that's where I'm kind of in the knower category. Like I'm bringing in import animals and strange and unusual species and stuff, and for those, I may assist feed, to try and get them kick-started in captivity so that I can, I need to get adults to live long enough to breed for me to get babies that then if those babies, if some of them suck and they're not going to make it, then they suck and they don't make it. And the strong babies from that are the ones that I'm keeping to propagate on. But that initial stock, my goal is to get them to live so that I can start a captive population.
I can totally, I get that.
I can see all sides. I definitely see the folks that are like, well, I got to try everything I want because I don't want this poor little baby to die. I get that. But I'm also with Warren, like, evolutionary speaking, it just wasn't supposed to make it. Like some of these things there's a reason our animals have 30 babies. If I
a ball python and the ball python, if it's not eating and it's not eating and it's not eating, then it's not eating. And I'm not going to go to extreme measures. And I don't care if it's a normal or a 17 gene snake.
Right. I agree with you.
My goal is to make animals that are going to thrive in captivity. And if you're not going to eat, then you're not going to thrive. And I'm not about keeping that gene in the pool. It's just.
And the only time that I'll go against that, my kind of, if it doesn't make it, is whenever I'm producing some of the rare animals like the Corallus ruschenbergeri. So, we imported a group from Trinidad. It's the only group in the world. And they can start off as lizard eaters. If you don't have live lizards to feed them, it would be a problem. So you have to be willing, if you want, to force or to assist feed, or the Corallus renadensis, those kind of things. I will assist those, but a rainbow boa that's not feeding, I'm just not doing it. A boa constrictor, I'm just not doing it. It's just, and what people also have to remember with assist feeding is that they often leave it too late. So their animal is a bag of skin and bones.
Yeah.
Then they try to assist feed it and the animal dies. And the reason the animal dies is that it requires energy to digest food. And whenever the animal has literally no energy, it can't digest, it dies.
We just experienced that.
You need to start the assist feeding earlier on. So if you've got a species that's rare and is not a natural rodent eater or lizard eater or whatever you can use, then you need to start assist feeding pretty early on. But what I do with my tree boas is that I will use rodents as the food, but I'll wash them, and I bought the gecko scent and the animal scent and the frog scent from the company that does the Reptilinks.
Yeah,
and that works really well. And it was like $100 for those 3, but I keep them in the freezer, defrost them whenever I need them. I also, just a local grocery store, I can pick up concentrated chicken broth sachets, and that works really well for them as well. So I'll just vary between those, and if after a couple of weeks that those rare tree boas are not eating, then I will go to the assist feeding. The other thing you've got to do is, it's kind of weird, with some of these tree boas that I've got, you think, right, they're going to be eating live food or whatever. We've had great success with our Trinidad tree boas by just dropping a rodent that is absurdly large for a baby animal on the cage, a dead rodent on the bottom of the cage, and coming back the next day, and most of them actually eat them. It's just absurd, not what you expect. They're not eating white lab mice in the Trinidad.
Are you telling me there's not little white rats running around Trinidad?
Apparently not, but they do really well.
And Robert, you said
those I will assist feed.
Yeah,
those kind of really rare animals. I've got one that I'm going to assist feed tonight. It's a baby Corallus ruschenbergeri from Venezuela, and there's maybe 6 of them in the US. So I will assist feed
a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It dies. We'll just make more of them next year, but I'll try to get that one just going a little bit.
Then Robert, you just had a ball python that just wouldn't make it, right?
It wouldn't eat, and finally Rachel came down and she's like, it finally ate. I'm like, it's gonna die. I said, that thing was so skinny, that meal's gonna kill it. And sure enough, the next day I went in there and it had regurged, so I picked it up and threw it in it was still alive, barely.
Mm-hmm.
So I recycled it to a king snake.
Yeah,
that's all. It just wasn't going to make it. There was no way.
Yeah, I own 2 king snakes now to help me with that. With Samboas, just don't make it.
Yep, I can be like, you.
This random king snake gets. Yeah. You're like Oprah. You get a ball python. You get a ball python.
Yeah.
And as long as it's not the people that are doing that with just normal ball pythons, because I think they're going to have trouble selling them. It's sick animals that are not going to make it. That's one thing.
Yeah. See, I listened to Modern Medusa podcast today. It was the one where Corey Martin was on, and they actually referenced us on there, talking about when we were talking to what was it? Oh, we're talking to Nick about how folks want to cull out normals or get upset when they have normals and they just want to get rid of them. And Dominique was very much for culling out normal ball pythons because of seeing so many of them in rescues. And I think you see them in rescues, but I think you're seeing a small fraction of what's really out there in the rescues. I think just killing it because you don't want it to end up in a rescue is kind of weird. Like I'm all for if it wasn't eating. I get that. But just because, I don't know, you're making up the future for this animal and you think that it's going to end up in a rescue, it was a weird reason to cull it out. But to each their own. If you want to get rid of them and feed your...
I think we see there's many morphs in rescues. It's just many Mojaves and spiders and pastels all in rescues. So if that's what you want to call them, rescues or whatever. But
yes.
No.
The people on Facebook that go, who's got snakes for free?
Yeah.
I have a rescue. Like, that's not how that works. No rescue has ever gone out looking for animals. Not once. Stephen Poole, I just wanted to throw this out there, said he went and purchased every one of the books you suggested earlier.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah, they're great.
He went ahead and got them.
That's not bad.
40 said 45 bucks.
45.51.
One was new and 3 were like new. And
For all 4 shipped.
That's awesome.
That's pretty good price for 4 books.
It's approaching my bedtime, folks.
I'm agreeing with you,
I know.
Robert.
I'm normally showered and in bed by 10.
Y'all are old. All right.
Shut up, James.
Awesome.
So
I've been like that since I was 20 years old.
James stays up until 3:30, and I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, your body is going to die one day soon.
It's going to die one day.
Because it can't function like this.
I'll be in bed at 1:30.
God, no.
Get up at 6:30.
No. I need a good 8 hours.
Normally I'm good on about 5 hours, but right now, being shorthanded and having to get out there and work
in the heat
all day, I'm
I've been yawning.
Those racks.
I almost texted John and said, y'all are I'm out tonight because I was so exhausted. I was like, no, I can't do that again. I already did it when I was sick.
I want to thank both of y'all for coming. I was super excited to have both of y'all on here.
Me too.
You two are, and I make fun of Travis all the time, but Travis is one of my favorite people on earth. And the two of you, I respect your opinions in the hobby more than most. And so I was super happy to have y'all on. And like I said, I love Warren's on 5 Million Podcasts. If you want to know his background, go listen to Chris, or I'm sure you're on Morelia Python. I'm sure you've done the Herpetoculture podcast at some point. So go listen to those for the background because it's very interesting. And you can hear him answer on all 3 of them. I'm sure, hey, what was the first reptile you got? I don't want to ask that question. But thank y'all for coming on. Warren, if people want to reach out to you, if they have questions about parthenogenesis, you can ask somebody else, leave them alone. But if they want to ask you about boas or anything else, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, Facebook, I have a standard Facebook, Warren Booth on Facebook. I do not accept friends if I don't know the people, generally.
Amen
That's
to
me.
that.
I get like 2,500 waiting friend requests that I'll never respond to. Because
I just
send me an email or a
them.
message to say, hey, I am this person and I'd like to talk about this and whatever. My other Facebook, I've got the Boa Booth Facebook page, which is just
Such an awesome name.
stuff. I know, great. And also the same thing on Instagram, and I use Instagram a lot more, but you can send me emails through or messages through any of those. I'm happy to respond. I respond to mostly every day. People will send me a question or two, but and also my university my research website, booth-lab.org.
I definitely suggest you check that out.
booth@utulsa.edu.
Go to Warren's university site and go to his publications and read his stuff, and then try to argue with him about parthenogenesis.
I still love to do that. Was like when I sent it to him, he goes, "I've read that. Have you?" And I'm like, "Yes," and I've talked to him. That person obviously, if he did read them, had no idea what he was reading.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think people might read them or say they've read them, and they don't really understand what they're reading, and therefore they make up their own mind about it. Similar to what we're seeing today with science, anyway. In general, you know, they've glanced at a couple of words and they think that they've read it, but they haven't.
I'll be honest. If I don't understand it, I'll ask James, and then if he explains it to me and I still don't understand it, I message Travis.
I'm always happy.
That's how it works.
And same thing, like I go to the Arlington show every year, a couple of times a year or whatever. So if I'm there and you see me, just ask me questions.
I was so sad that I did not go to Oklahoma and I didn't get a chance.
He wasn't there. He got.
I didn't go there. Yeah, I rarely go to the local shows. I want to go to the Herb show.
All this time, I thought that you guys had gotten to meet him that weekend and was slightly jealous.
He missed the Lord of the Flies show.
He didn't get to see all 5 trillion.
Because I've met Travis.
I spent all weekend with electric fly swatters, just killing flies all weekend.
I do want to go to that show. It's difficult, with 2 young kids, and I travel a lot anyway.
You can bring them with you.
No. I my wife and tell her that I'm going off to a reptile show for the day.
How old are they?
4 and 7.
That is spoken like a true father. He's like, no, I want to go enjoy that.
So bring them.
Also, Oklahoma, which is riddled with COVID.
Okay, well,
the last thing I want to do with my 4 and 7-year-old is bring them into a reptile show, which is probably not going to have many people wearing masks.
No.
Also factual.
Yeah. So sorry, but I like my children's lives. So yeah,
I can respect that.
All right, Travis, if folks want to get a hold of you and not the guy that rides motorcycles.
Motocross, yeah. So Travis Wyman on Facebook, Snakes and Bakes on Instagram. You can email me asplundii@gmail. You can also find me on the Morph Market Reptile forum. I tend to lurk there pretty often.
I still love that you have one of the most confusing emails on earth.
It's not confusing.
It's not a super easy one.
Well, okay, but it's from my carnivorous plant hobby, which I was really heavily into before, and I just carried it over for my my reptiles and stuff too. So.
It's a tricky email when someone says, "Hey, what's your email?" and you just start spelling it. You don't actually say it. Because Katie has to do the same thing with her email. I won't say it on here, but it's not that hard. It's a weird one, and she always just starts spelling it for people, and you can tell that they're confused.
Because whenever I say it, they're like, "What?" Yeah.
I don't think I have to take a shower when I get home. Millie has given me a bath.
She's getting licked by a dog. Anybody listening? That's a dog, not like a person, and you're just
Millie
licking Robert.
Is a dog. Millie is a spoilt dog with a T on the end. Yes, it's that bad that it is spoilt with a T.
Spoilt.
All right, Robert, if people want to get a hold of you, lsreptilerex.com.
Yep.
If you're going to be at Conroe, it's too late to get your orders in. But get there early if you want a rack.
And go straight to him.
I probably have nearly half of them sold that I'm taking already.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you show up on Sunday wanting a snake rack, that was a bad idea.
2 trailers full of shit.
Really?
Yeah. So this would be the most I've ever taken to a show. It's almost 40 racks.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
So,
all right, James, people want to get a hold of us?
It is, when you get a hold of me, it's simply_serpents on Instagram or simply serpents on Facebook or the Reptile Gumbo podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and at gmail.com. Thank you guys for coming on. This has been awesome. I was super glad to finally get Warren on. Travis is like the 700th time you've been on here. So.
And we love it every time.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, it'd be great if I could get some of the baked goods.
It's not my fault.
Like a raspberry cheesecake.
I had pretzels.
Yeah, she brought you pretzels.
I did. They were good pretzels.
I had a brownie and a piece of banana nut bread before I came here that my daughter made.
I had
caramel in the brownie and walnuts. Oh, it was amazing.
You know what? I have a giant jug of peanut M&Ms downstairs.
They're Halloween peanut M&Ms.
I'm going to go eat half a jug of peanut M&Ms.
All right, guys, don't go anywhere while he ends the broadcast. So we make sure you have everything.
Everybody for watching and listening. We will be back next week. Goodbye.